For a long time, I've been asked to put together a build that allows you to pick up absolutely everything that you come across, every single piece of loot, and not be encumbered. So I put this build together to incorporate the ability to pick everything up, as well as have some utility for surviving in the exiled lands, and I feel like I've done that. I will say that I don't think you should take this build up against something like the Arena Champion, because I think that would still be a recipe for disaster unless you're a high level player and you are able to really get in and do a lot of damage to the Arena Champion yourself. I just don't feel like this build is going to be able to do that. I also don't feel like you should take this build up against the Judge in the Isle of Siptah, but for pretty much everything else, you should be able to complete and dominate against the content in Conan Exiles. Oh wait, there's one more thing you shouldn't go after in the exiled lands with this build, and that's going to be the rock slide. Honestly, I would tell you to avoid the rock slide entirely because I just feel like that fight is completely out of balance. For those of you that may not know, my name is Wak4863, but you can call me Wak. Now, I tested this build in the silver mine for a couple of reasons. One, there's just an absolute ton of resources and loot in here that you can pick up and take back with you. The other reason is the final boss. It just has a lot of hit points and it does poison and other status effects to your character and your thralls, so I felt like this would be a decent test to make sure that everything was able to survive this fight. Now, I'm not going to say that this is some meta build and the only build that you should do, and I do feel like there are some areas where you can make changes, but we'll go over that when I explain the attributes and all the gear that I'm using. And right now just so happens to be the perfect time for that. So let's start with attributes. You can see I put 0 points in strength, and there's a couple of reasons why I did that. First of all, I feel like the agility tree is just a better tree for movement and getting around, and I really want this build to be agile because you've got to be able to get away from damage when you need to. Additionally, I feel like the perks that are in the strength category really don't vibe with the way the game plays now. With the changes to the stagger system and the combat system, I feel like those perks only come into play in very specific situations. So let's take a look at the second perk, Combo Master. Combo finishers deal 20% more damage. Well, how often do you have enough stamina, or how often are you not being hit and interrupted to actually complete a combo finisher? So when I look at this tree, I don't feel like this tree really needs to be in this build, and that's why we have 0 in strength. That brings us to agility, where we're going to pick up 3 perks, so we're spending a total of 15 points here. We have Backtab. That way, while our thralls are engaged with the content, we can walk up and deal additional damage from behind. We have Deadshot because I want to use a bow in this build to start engagements where I'm safe and my thralls are going to go in and do damage. It really doesn't make sense to have Precision Strike because this is a carry everything build, and it's going to be very rare to have a medium or lighter load. And then we have QuickFooted because I like to be able to get around more, and this is where I would say you could tweak this build and not go for QuickFooted. You could spend those points somewhere else, but me personally, I like being able to sprint around a lot faster, and I just feel a lot more agile and fluid when I have this perk. I'm skipping the entire Vitality tree because we're going to be able to carry so much that we can have multiple stacks of potions for our adventures, and we can just use those to heal up. Now, obviously, if you decided that you wanted to have Fierce Vitality and a few more hit points, and you didn't really care about moving around, like I was saying with Agility, you could put those points into Vitality to have a bit more health in your adventures. However, you would lose some damage from the points that I have placed in Agility. That brings us to Authority, where we're going to spend 20 points to get all 4 perks here. The first perk that we chose was the Healthy Diet. Your active followers gain passive health regeneration when not engaged in combat. Now, you could also pick Commanding Presence here if you feel like you're going to get into combat and deal a bit more damage during the time that they're fighting. Either one of those will suit your needs for this build, so pick between those depending on the style of your gameplay. The next perk is War Party because we want to have 2 thralls following us at all times. This is going to allow us to spread out the chaos that's going on with any NPCs that we come across. So there are multiple thralls for all the NPCs to deal with, and that gives us more of a window of opportunity to not get in those engagements, or that gives us the ability to do damage from behind utilizing that extra 10% damage from the perk in Agility. Additionally, we have the irritate perk here, and what we can do is set one follower that maybe has higher hit points to be the one that's irritating. That way, when the enemies come up, they're going after the one with more hit points, and then the one that maybe has more damage or doesn't have as much hit points will then not be the main focus for the NPCs. Additionally, that's going to keep you again out of the limelight so that you can move around the battlefield and inject yourself when you're needed or when you want to get in the fight. Then we're going to put 5 points in grit, and it's really just for the additional 20 stamina. The increased armor by 40 really doesn't matter all that much because this is going to be a heavy armor build, so you're going to have quite a bit of armor anyway for that damage reduction. However, the additional points in stamina are pretty important if you want to be able to roll away or actually engage in the combat. Having a higher stamina pool is pretty important. But really, again, these 5 points are a personal preference for me, so you could choose to put those 5 points somewhere else. Maybe that's where you end up with a little bit more agility or a little bit more vitality. You could move those around to fit your playstyle. And obviously, since this is a carry everything build, we have a full 20 points spent in expertise. The first perk that I chose was Efficient Harvest. The final hit when harvesting grants twice as many resources. I feel like this kicks in more often than the Careful Harvest because there really aren't as many rare resources around the map as there is the ability to just get double the resources. And when you do get the rare resource on that final hit, you are getting double those rare resources. So I feel like that's a better perk than Careful Harvest. Then at the bottom, we have Beast of Burden. That way we can carry more than we're supposed to and still be able to dodge and move at full speed. And that really is the perk that this whole build is designed around. Now let's go over the armor. I'm wearing 4 pieces of heavy armor and 1 piece of light armor. Let's get the 1 piece of light armor out of the way first, and then we'll go over the rest. So the 1 piece of light armor that I'm wearing are the leggings of Karak. I chose these because of the additional stamina. The epic version of these pants give you an additional 30 stamina, and it also gives you an additional 8% follower damage. Now obviously, these stats can be boosted if you craft them with a tier 4 thrall, and I recommend doing that so that you can capitalize on those extra bonuses. The other 4 pieces of armor that I'm wearing are all heavy armor, and that is the Barachan Reaver set. So the head, the chest, the boots, and the gloves are all going to be Barachan Reaver. And the reason why I did this is because it gives you additional health. Obviously, again, craft it with a tier 4 thrall and you're going to get a bonus to the amount of health that you get. And this is very important because we're really squishy without the additional health from that set. Now, you could choose another set that's to your liking that gives you additional health. I just happen to like the Barachan Reaver. And then I applied the bulk plating to each piece of armor. It does add a lot of weight to your character, but that doesn't matter. So we want that for the additional armor value that we get from it, and the amount of additional weight on the armor really doesn't matter because we can carry as much as we want to. And with this setup, I was able to achieve a 71% damage reduction. For those of you that are wondering about the look, I used the Thaumaturgy bench to change the style of the chest piece and the pants so that those have the Pictish Dancer appearance as an illusion over that armor. The headpiece, the gloves, and the boots are all in the style of the Barachan Reaver without any illusion added. I honestly thought it would be kind of fun to have a build where you can carry just absolutely everything, but you're wearing very little. So let's talk about the weaponry. We want to have a short sword, we want to have a shield, we want to have a really good bow, and then I'm also using the katana just because I love the katana. So the sword that I'm using is the Sword of Champions. Now this can be found in the Isle of Sipta by fighting the Child of Jill boss on top of New Luxor. You can also find this in the Well of Skelos by fighting one of the mini bosses on your way to the final boss in that dungeon. The katana that I'm using is Musashi's Black Blade, and that can be found in the legendary chests that are in the dungeons in the Exiled Lands and the Isle of Sipta. Now when we get the 3rd chapter to the Age of War, there's another place where you can find Musashi's Black Blade, and I'll be covering that in a future video. So if you haven't already, I recommend subscribing to the channel and clicking that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of those videos. The shield that I'm using is the Shield of Kudaman. Now I'm using this because it just has a very high amount of durability, and I applied the reinforcement kit to it so that it has even more durability. But any legendary shield or shield for that matter in this slot would work just fine. For a bow, just find the absolute best bow you can and use that through your playthrough. For arrows, I'm just using the steel arrow and then the healing arrows. The healing arrows aren't great, but they can add just a bit of vitality to both yourself and your thrall. And then obviously you should go after the best tools you possibly can. In this video, I am using the Black Blood tools to harvest everything. For my buff food, I'm using the salted exquisite meat that's going to give me additional damage to my agility weapons. I'm also using the elixir of vigor so that I can add to the amount of hit points I have. And the thralls that I chose to have follow me in this video are the Cimmerian Berserker and Leonili. I actually chose Leonili because I didn't want to have corruption in this video because I already have very low health and stamina. Additionally, this allows me to corrupt myself and uncorrupt myself very easily if I want to jump into some sorcery. And in order to corrupt myself, I can either use Corrupting Bruise, or I can use one of the weapons that corrupts your character. Now, one last thing to keep in mind with this build, even though there isn't a weight carry limit, you are still limited by the amount of slots in your inventory. I believe that's right around 200, so keep that in mind. You don't just want to continue to accumulate. You do need to go back to your base and empty your inventory from time to time. Don't forget to whack the like button on the way out, and let me know in the comments section below, how would you change this build? I'd like to thank all my YouTube members for their continued support. Y'all are absolute legends. If you're looking for more guides and information to Conan Exiles, check out the video on the screen right now.